We recording? Okay, I think we're good. In the gaming community, a historical landmark that we can all remember is when a new console generation begins. People think back on the PS2 and probably hear Goldfinger in the background and bleeding teenagers falling off planks of wood, or the Nintendo 64 where they remember taking back Peach's castle so the princess can return to her position as the ruler over the various citizens working under her enslavement. I'm starting to see why our parents didn't really like video games so much. We all remember the eras ruled by the hunk of plastic of the season. I mean, at this point, we all kind of know that the easiest way to enjoy games is through a high-end PC, where you can run everything at max settings and mod stuff easily, emulate old games, and all that good stuff. But there's something about having that dedicated machine, that product designed from head to toe for the sole purpose of playing the games released for it, and that unique recognition we all have from the appearance of the system itself, the way the box art is designed for the titles we enjoy, and the controllers used to transport ourselves into the world we want to adventure in. There's something special about the physical gaming market, so it's really no surprise that every 5 to 7 years, the entire gaming community gets excited to see the new console coming to the store shelves and what new opportunities it will bring to the table. I guess the difference nowadays is that it used to be easier to distinguish the generations. You can look at a PS1 game and a PS2 title side by side and immediately tell that those are running off of completely different hardware, but now it's starting to get a little hard to discern the games that were developed with the PlayStation 4 in mind versus the PlayStation 5. Are we reaching a graphical threshold? Is this the ceiling of what crazy and bombastic experiences developers are able to put together for us? Or is there something that these new generation consoles are able to offer us beyond just visual spectacle that preceding generation systems were not capable of? Well, we're gonna try to answer all those questions today as we take a look at one of the hottest new consoles on the market with the PlayStation 5. I guess the biggest standout feature here is the design. People seemed a little split on this when the console was first revealed, but personally, I like it. The curves, the contrast, the dynamics, it's a good looking system, but it's also very large. This console is obnoxiously huge.
Big boy.
Finding a place to set this thing might not be super easy. You'll need to find a good spot set aside near your TV, and it can't be too far away either, because the system does come with an HDMI 2.1 cord, the new standard for sure, but it's sure not very long, like somewhere between 4 and 5 feet, and I'm pretty sure that goes for every cord in the box. Well, maybe you don't have room to stand it upright, but does it fit on its side? Well, yes, actually. The system comes with a stand that can be used to either hold the system up vertically or horizontally, but it needs a little adjustment when being attached to the console depending on the orientation you want to display it in. When standing the console on its side, you just fit the grip on the back of the stand to the console here where you see these little symbols and it clicks into place. For vertical display though, you need to pry out this little cover off the screw hole on the bottom of the PS5, and man, I can only imagine how many people have already lost this. It's got a little place inside the stand to keep it when it's not in use, but still, I know how people are about tiny pieces like this. Hiding right next to the cover for the port though is this little screw that's used to fasten the stand onto the bottom of the system. The awkward thing here is that it isn't one of those screws with a tab that folds out on the top when you need it. It's just got this slot here for using a coin or something to screw or unscrew it, so I hope you got a quarter nearby if you need to adjust this. Even when the system is on its side though, the overwhelming size of this old boy is a hurdle. I'm laying this guy down right on its side, but it still doesn't fit under my TV. Why are you so big? Once you do eventually get it setting up where you want it and get everything plugged in, you can boot up the system, and I guess this is where I can start listing my issues with the UI. Look at this particle effect that you see when the system boots itself up. It's visually impressive on first viewing, but it's an effect that's so intangible and so scattered that it's hard to establish any real connection or memory of it. The PS4 boot up is kind of bland too, but I can at least recall the musical tone that plays. The visual here is simple and has a memorable quality to it. Not as much as, say, the boot up to the original PlayStation, but it still stands out more than this. And unfortunately, that carries over after booting up the system as well. I mean, I don't mind the way things are organized here. I like that games and media players like YouTube and Crunchyroll have their own tabs to help keep everything categorized, but are themes just not a thing anymore? Something I've loved since the old days of the PSP, and of course carrying over to the PS4, were being able to customize your main menu with themes that provided unique visuals, music, and sound effects that really made your system feel like it was your own space. That feature is missing here entirely, and I can't really figure out why. Now, when you move your cursor to highlight a specific game, you'll see the box art and sometimes hear the music that belongs to it, but it's nowhere near as nice as having this cool vaporwave theme I've got for my PS4. It's so boring in comparison, and I sincerely sincerely hope there's an option later down the road to use themes like those on previous platforms to add a bit more life to these menus again. Aside from that, everything here seems to work well. It's easy enough to find folders like screen captures and stuff. The PSN store is seamlessly integrated with the rest of the menu here, so you don't even have to boot up another app to look at its library, and then this little taskbar works well enough. At any point when playing a game or doing some other task, you can tap the PlayStation button on the controller and pull up this taskbar that would allow you to switch between recently used applications, close out of the one you're on right now, power off the system or put it into rest mode, access your friends list and join or create parties, check downloads and notifications, that kind of stuff. I'm used to how this works now, but when compared to how it functioned on the PS4, it feels like there's an unnecessary added step here. On the PS4, I could close out a game by holding the PlayStation button and hitting close. It's short and to the point, the way I like it. But now I have to tap the PlayStation button, move over to the switcher icon, select it, highlight the game I'm playing right now, press start, and then scroll down to close the game. It's not nearly as seamless, and it's a small gripe, I know, but it's the sort of mild inconvenience that only gets my nerves because it's following a method that just felt so much simpler and required far less input. I guess I have been kind of negative so far, but this stuff does stand out. These are important issues to address, and if I'm giving my honest opinions on the console, this stuff is gonna come up. But maybe for the sake of argument, this is a bunch of smaller things that are kind of stacking up, making it look worse than it really is. So, is there anything the system does well to help even things back out? The UI does have its benefits while playing games. Like, I really enjoy how easy it is to boot up music from my Spotify while playing, and I think recording snapshots and video clips is just as easy as before, but the interface while editing and sharing them feels more convenient than ever. More than that though, this UI comes in handy in some unexpected ways. So here I am playing Miles Morales, I'm doing a bunch of cleanup out here in the city, and I'm looking for side missions to complete. I could scour the city and cycle through menus to find out where they are, or I could just bring up this taskbar and see these cards that actually lay out side missions I can complete or list criteria required to earn trophies I haven't collected yet. And all I have to do is select one of these cards and I'll be taken right to where the mission starts. It's actually a really handy tool for open world games where I kind of just want to move between missions after I've done my fair share of exploring, and it's the kind of change I can appreciate because it's something that actively enhances gameplay. And let's get into that more. I mean, after all, the main purpose of this machine is to play video games, right? So how's the performance? This is where the qualities of the PlayStation 5 come together, and a lot of the results are incredibly satisfying, but there are still cracks forming here. So one of the biggest selling points of the system is the SSD, or solid state drive. It's more powerful than your standard internal hard drive, and the loading times with this baby are through the roof. Like, just look at how fast I can start a game right from the menu. It's fantastic, and it really goes a long way while playing. Reloading after losing a life, fast traveling, switching save files, it can all be done in a flash now, and this is one of the things that would be the hardest to go back from. I can't even imagine trying to sit through the obnoxious loading screens of old after experiencing how great this feels. And then there's ray tracing. On top of being able to output video in up to 8K resolutions and HDR, the PlayStation 5 is able to render out lighting effects and graphical fidelity with incredible detail. Just comparing the PS4 Spider-Man with its PS5 counterpart shares a daunting contrast between the capabilities of each system, and it goes even further than that. Like being able to render true reflections on the sides of buildings or surfaces, this detail is stunning. It does also come with performance enhancements for some PS4 games, which will also run on this system, but it sure does seem weirdly selective about it. God of War is a good example, where the game can now be played in 1080p and 60 frames per second, or at 30 FPS in 4K resolution. Sadly, the system isn't able to play the game in 60 FPS at 4K at the same time, and the same holds true for the majority of PS5 games as well, which also host a performance mode where the game can be played at a higher frame rate, or a fidelity mode where the game can showcase impressive lighting and additional effects the system has to offer. What's more, it's a shame that more games weren't given this performance boost. Like, the loading times on the Crash Insane trilogy are much more bearable than before, but it still feels like running through mud when the game is still outputting at this frame rate, and it certainly doesn't have a 4K mode to make up for it. Bloodborne is another source of contention, as I know a ton of people were really upset that this game couldn't run at a consistent 60 frames per second on the PS5, but personally I still have to find a way to force myself to even like that game, but that's a discussion for another day. Alright, so something worth mentioning is that I was in the middle of filming all this when I found out that Insomniac just updated Miles Morales. They added a brand new performance mode that lets you play in 60 frames per second, but you also get all of the ray tracing and everything. That includes the, true reflections on the sides of buildings and stuff like that. It looks so good. The only downside is that it doesn't play in 4K, but a lot of people that have the PS5 don't even have 4K displays to begin with. I mean, the monitor I use when I'm recording gameplay footage or I'm streaming, that's a 1080p monitor. So I can play in 60 frames per second, With ray tracing and everything, it just isn't at a 4K resolution. It's the best of both worlds, and that is fantastic. That's a great step in the right direction, and it actually addresses one of the smaller issues that I was bringing up in this review. So hey, great foot forward. I'm looking forward to seeing if other games follow suit. At least you can carry over your PS4 library to this system, and that goes for the physical and digital games. I would, however, recommend using an external storage device to store PS4 games and their data though, because while the SSD on the PS5 is really nice and adds a lot of benefits to gameplay, the storage on it is
incredibly disappointing.
825 gigabytes, which is kind of a weird, arbitrary number, but it's also partly allocated to some required files that leaves you with a little over 600 gigabytes of storage, and that can fill up pretty fast these days when you've got games that can take up to 100 gigabytes of storage all on their own. You know what else sucks? I really don't like how preserving games for the PS1, PS2, or hell, even the PS3 have really fallen to the wayside. I guess there's the PlayStation Now service where you can stream games on your console to play a ton of titles, and yeah, the amount of games on here is great. I'm especially grateful for some of the PS4 titles on here, like Gravity Rush Remastered, that are really hard to track down physically. But whereas PS4 games can be downloaded to the system and played as long as you still have an active PS Now membership, any of the PS3 or PS2 titles on here, you're streaming them over the internet, and it still sucks as much as it did on the PS4. How am I supposed to enjoy playing Sonic Adventure with all this input and video lag? Now, there were some PS2 games that got a proper digital port to the PS4, and they are still playable on the PS5, like Star Wars Bounty Hunter, the Jak and Daxter series, along with some others, but there are a few titles in this lineup with pretty severe issues. Just look at Ape Escape 2. Like, wow, these textures are going all over the place, and even the interface is glitching out like crazy. At this point, yeah, don't even try to play this game on the PS5. Well, this thing sure is losing ground fast. I mean, considering it costs $400 to $500 to even buy this system, and they're getting really hard to track down right now, the PS5 had better had something up its sleeve to make it all worth it. And it kinda does. The DualSense, the newest controller in the PlayStation lineup, and what's more, a game called Astro's Playroom to help showcase its capabilities. Astro's Playroom comes free with the system, and it's a follow-up to a game called Astrobot, which was a similar tech demo developed for the PlayStation VR when it was first released. This tech demo was actually a surprisingly in-depth game that's designed like a classic 3D collectathon platformer, and it not only helps give you a good idea of what your new console is capable of, it's got plenty of levels, tons of fun callbacks to influential PlayStation games, and even a really cool final boss battle that I really don't want to spoil here. One of the greatest assets of Astro's Playroom is how it shows off the DualSense controller. This thing is really comfortable. I think it's got the perfect amount of weight, and I like the way my hands fit on it. Feels really natural, but it's got a few fun features packed away inside of it too. The first of these is the haptic feedback. It's essentially a more advanced vibration mechanism, and yeah, it feels awesome. Like here, they show a bunch of little Astrobots going inside the controller, and it actually does feel like there's a bunch of tiny little dudes in here while I shake it around. It's crazy, and it's a little hard to explain. More than that though, it's capable of giving out these really tiny vibrations that help indicate the kind of surface Astro is on while he walks around, or even emulating the feeling of rain on your umbrella. This is insane, and I don't know if there's really a proper way for me to describe quite how it works. The controller also features a built-in microphone that can be used for in-game effects or using vocal commands through a voice-to-text feature that has actually not gotten a single thing I've said wrong so far. The touchpad makes a return, and it's got a little more space to use, and it's very responsive, but the biggest addition, in my opinion, is the adaptive triggers. The trigger buttons on the DualSense can adapt to different levels of resistance depending on the criteria the game sets out. Using a bow, that trigger button is going to be harder to pull, but using a minigun, well then the trigger is just going to be going nuts right under your finger. I mean, look at this! It's not like these features are exclusive to a built-in tech demo. This stuff is in other games too. In Spider-Man and Miles Morales, you can feel the triggers move while the elasticity of your webs reaches their maximum tension, or when I was playing Fortnite, I play what I want to play, shut up. I noticed that every single gun had a specific level of tension for the triggers while firing, adding another level to how different each weapon feels from each other. These features are honestly amazing, and I think that what they add to these experiences helps solidify the PS5's justification as a next-generation console. I've heard people say that they've had issues with the battery life on the DualSense, but I haven't really noticed that myself. Then again, I am pretty busy these days, and I don't really have time to play for more than a couple hours at a time. Altogether, we're looking at faster loading times, ray tracing, more processing powers, enhanced draw distances, and everything the DualSense has to offer. There's a lot of good stuff here, but I would still recommend holding off on the console for now. The lack of themes, a small library of games that are actually exclusive to this console, disappointing retro game preservation, and other issues like system crashes holding the PS5 back, and yes, the system has crashed on me several times. At first I thought this was due to the game I was playing, but I've heard that people also had this problem with Godfall and Demon's Souls too. Granted, there have been a couple of firmware updates for the system since then, and everything seems a lot more stable, but I think that's all the more reason to give the system some time to settle and figure out some of its issues. I tried to convey what I like about this console because I really do like my PS5, like a lot, but it does have enough going against it that I think it warrants people holding off picking one up just yet. Now, because of a lot of low-life scalpers and supply issues and all that nonsense, it's not like people have much choice right now, but at least try not to feel so bad if you don't have to worry about finding a place for this beast next to your TV just yet. Still, a console is only as good as the games that are on it, so I hope you'll join me on Christmas Eve as we take a look at one of the launch titles for the PlayStation 5 with Spider-Man Miles Morales. Until then, you can find me on Twitter, Discord, that purple streaming website that YouTube doesn't want me to mention by name. You know the one. Whichever you prefer, links in the description, and of course, as always, spread the word, tell your friends, and until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. See you next mission. Hey everyone, welcome to the end of the video. I am so sorry for being gone for so long. I meant to take off like a week, but it's been longer than that. But still, I have had longer hiatuses, and so I'm glad to be back on the horse and to be back into the video making scheme. And yes, 2 weeks from now, on Christmas Eve, you can look forward to a full review of Spider-Man Miles Morales. I am really excited to be working on this. I have a lot of things to say, and this might be a little different from videos that I've made in the past. You'll kind of see what I mean, maybe. I don't know, it's hard to explain right now. It's not going to be an hour long, don't expect that. It's not quite on the same level as the PS4 Spider-Man game. Plus, I've been kind of honing my craft since then, and most of that video was just rambling, and I'm hoping to maybe break this one down a little bit more and make everything that I'm saying a little more concise, but also a bit more meaningful. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to work on that, but I just want to give a huge shout out to all of you wonderful people, you incredible patrons that have been supporting me financially throughout this entire time, my whole journey of making all of this. It means so much, and thank you again for just like continuing to support me in my little unexpected hiatus there. Of course, I want to give a special shout out to my top tier patrons: Patricia Marcoux, Christine Larkin, Earl Valco, Cirrus the Skeptic, and Wonton Photo. Thank you guys so much. You make this show possible, and you make it worth it. With all of that said, thank you so much for watching. I have been Wayne. I don't have a clever quote for the end of this video. I'll work on that for the next one, and I'll see you next mission.